to talk all things MD, which is metabolic dysfunction.
Awesome.
So first of all, ask you about this book, because this book, which by the way, I'm going to give away to one lucky listener who on my Instagram post today has dropped 3 tags sharing the post. I'm going to give away this book to one lucky winner. So this is called the MD Factor Diet. So can you tell us about this book a little bit?
Yes. So the MD Factor Diet is really the meal plan that I use primarily in my practice to correct metabolic dysfunction. So metabolic dysfunction is a very common thing that develops with people, but essentially people who will come in and say, I've been trying to lose weight and I can't. Not just I'm drinking all this soda and eating junk food and all that. No, I'm following a 1,200 calorie diet. I'm exercising. And guess what? I'm gaining weight. I'm losing weight. That person has a dysfunctional metabolism, and it's really common. So in my practice that specializes in weight loss and nutritional management, 90% of my patients had evidence of this metabolic dysfunction on lab work. So when we tested their blood and saw how their bodies were handling sugar, cholesterol, fat, we found evidence that they had the metabolic dysfunction. So it's super common. Now, what causes it? So one of the big contributors is just getting older in general.
Right.
So if you look at a 30-year-old and a 60-year-old who are the normal weight, so no one's overweight, they eat the same meal. The 60-year-old is going to have a higher glucose to sugar load and a higher insulin load, the hormone that's necessary for dealing with it.
Yes.
So that happens naturally as we age. Another huge contributor is hormone change, like menopause. So my practice has been filled for more than 20 years with women who've taken really good care of themselves. They work out, they diet, they watch their weight, they don't overdo, they experience hormone change, and sometimes it's full-on menopause, or sometimes it's just things are changing, and they find that they are gaining despite eating less, exercising more, doing better. And, when they go see someone about it who doesn't understand it, they're told, you're just not exercising enough.
Don't get me started.
But it's really that you don't know the in and the out and the math. And then my patients would say, this was really insulting to me. I'm a PhD in math. I can do math.
Right?
Calories. But if your metabolism is dysfunctional, it doesn't work properly. So you have to do something different. And that's what the MD Factor Diet is about.
So let me tell you, on Tuesday, I have an online webinar subscription where I'm teaching all things about how to take your health and fitness to the next level. And my class lecture on Tuesday night was all about metabolism. Yesterday was the first day that I actually picked up your book and read it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I was talking about. The metabolic dysfunction, the metabolic factor that so many people overlook. And in fact, I was that person at 35. I was doing, I've been an MD since, 29. I knew all of the, calories in, calories out, exercise. I was doing all of this stuff that I was telling my patients to do, the people that took, because I'm also a group fitness instructor. So doing all of this stuff I was telling the people in my class to do, and it just wasn't working. And it made no sense until I started to dive in deep. But you started this discovery way longer than everyone else, which I'm kind of impressed about. So tell me more.
Right. So again, as I mentioned, more like 25 years ago, my practice was filled with women. And you end up realizing that all these women can't be wrong.
Exactly.
They can't all be mistaken.
Yes.
They can't all be thinking that they're eating much less than they are and exercising much more than they are. So you listen to your patients and you investigate it further, or you throw your hands up and nothing can be done. You're essentially crazy. That
right.
type of
Oh yeah.
When we looked, and it took time, initially I was checking certain things, and over time we added additional tests. And what I found is for the postmenopausal woman, we'll see that her cholesterol and blood sugar are fine. But if we dive deeper, we look at her hemoglobin A1C. That's a test of how sugar-coated your red blood cells are. That starts to creep up much earlier. So we see lab work showing that somebody really is having a dysfunction with the metabolism of glucose way before the typical things that people are looking at.
Right.
But all the while they're gaining weight and, being very frustrated about the whole situation.
So tell me the average patient that comes to you. What do they look like? What age are they? Like, what's their stereotype?
Yeah. So we see men, women, and children.
Okay.
80% of our patients are women, but that means 20% are men. Okay. So many of the men are husbands of women who are in the practice, or the men are largely referred by doctors. Okay. Because men tend to come to the weight loss journey later. That somebody said, we've already put you on 3 meds for the cholesterol, and you're on 2 things for blood sugar or 3 things for high blood pressure. You need to do something. It's not working. There's nothing more I can do. You're taking all this stuff. But women come sooner. And again, because all women experience this hormone change if they, live long enough, they're starting to see these changes which seem a little bit out of control. So I would say my average patient is a woman in her 50s who is experiencing a change in metabolism where she's putting on weight and she's already done something to deal with it, in terms of changing what she's eating, giving up wine, no longer having dessert, increasing her exercise, and just feeling like my body's letting me down here.
Right. So let me ask you this. When would be the ideal time for a patient to come see you?
Well, ideally, as soon as they're noticing any changes. Certainly we can work with people who need to lose 100 pounds or 75 pounds. Right. But the more weight you're dealing with, it's just harder.
Right.
But the reality is we work with all people at all different times. When somebody is motivated to make a change, that's the biggest part of it.
Yes.
I can't go ahead and lose the weight for them.
No.
We can give people great advice. They have to take it.
Yes.
They have to be the ones who are doing the exercise and everything. So, there's no magic. There's not like we snap our fingers and everyone's automatically thin. It's work.
Right.
And sometimes we have to keep adding things to what we're doing because we're dealing with stubborn metabolism. But we have to have somebody who feels like their health is worth fighting for and willing to put a little time in.
Right. Do you think that if I would have known about you, because my aha moment was at 35, literally when I had heard from everyone, just wait till you turn 35 because everything slows down, right? I mean, everyone's heard that, whether they're in medicine or not. But if I would have heard about you in my mid-20s, do you think that if I would have started working with you and following even just the guidelines in your book, that I could have avoided that slowdown?
Without doubt.
Cool.
So one of the reasons that I went into weight management, it's always for personal reasons.
Yep.
So, my entire family really struggles with significant weight issues. So when I was in medical school or even before medical school, you read the statistics. And if you have one parent who is obese, you're 40% likely to be obese yourself. If you have 2 parents, the statistics were like 80%.
Jeez.
So you look at that and you're like, oh gosh, this is what's going to happen to me, and I don't necessarily want that. What's really interesting is, so very early on, I got into what am I eating, how I'm moving, like my family didn't do the exercise that I eventually got into in my late teens, early 20s. Even when I was in medical school, I, taught aerobics at the time.
Hey, okay. Yes, another group fitness instructor. I love it.
You study and then you work out.
Yep.
Part of that was that concern that, I want a different outcome.
Yeah.
What's interesting is years and years later, I did some genetic studies on myself where they look at many markers for obesity. And I had the highest level of any of the patients that I had tested. We had tested like maybe 30 or 40 patients, and some of my patients were like 300 pounds, but my levels were the highest. So a lot of times, like my family would be like, well, you got the good genes.
Oh, yep.
Or, you got and it's like, and I actually found it to be very empowering. I have genes that are favorable for obesity or significant weight gain, but I've been able to modulate that by what I've been able to do with lifestyle. But what's really interesting is I don't know if I should have gotten that genetic testing 25, 30 years ago.
Right.
I might have been left to feel that it's inevitable.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have these genes that make it easy to gain, and once you gain, it's easy to put it back on, and you don't metabolize fat as well, and this and that. That I may have been defeated by that, but I didn't know.
Right.
So the bottom line is we do have our genetic background. I'm not saying that has no bearing. It certainly does.
Right.
There are things that we can do to, help us do the best with the genetic material we have.
Absolutely. And for those of you watching the podcast, you can only see her from neck up. So you can see she looks from neck up. She looks like she's in shape. I've seen her a whole lot. The girl looks good. So she has not fallen prey to those obesity genes. What percent do you think the genetic influence is to the phenotype of the person, the way the person looks?
It's so hard to say because, we, have our genes, but we also have the environment that we grow up in.
Right.
So if we have, parents who have weight issues and they're maybe more like into food and large meals, and this is how we show love. And, then it's like, well, our family's not athletic, the things that we tell ourselves and stuff like that. So it's really hard to separate it. I think they've done adoption studies and stuff like that. And there definitely is a role. It's not zero.
For
they
sure.
don't know the exact numbers.
It's my friend who she and I were in anesthesia residency together, and she and I have always been like-minded. She and I were the only ones that were ever interested in health and fitness back in the day when we were in med school and residency, and she's the one that actually came to the functional medicine conference with me. Her, and you would never guess that she has the genetic propensity to be morbidly obese, but she's shown me pictures of her family. Like almost everyone is morbidly obese, and this chick is has always been in super shape. So she's definitely one that uses the hey, I got the genes, but I have controlled the environmental factors, and so you have someone that comes in that possibly has that mentality, that excuse, if you will. How do you start working with them?
Yeah. So what we get to is we want to get what works for you.
Yes.
There's no right. There's not one thing that's going to work for each person, but is it working or is it not working? And then getting down to there. So what we usually start is with, really taking a good history and finding out what are some of the things that, predispose to the weight. Was it hormone change, or was it a lot of stress? Was it not sleeping? Medical conditions, everyone has a different journey, that they've gone through. And then we actually look at metabolism through actual blood tests.
Okay. So
we're looking at their blood sugar. We're looking at their 3-month blood sugar, their triglycerides. We look at their thyroid. We look at several vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
I test everyone for vitamin D, magnesium, and B12 because I find that if those are off, and they often are, that contributes to the metabolic dysfunction, or what we physicians will call insulin resistance.
Yes.
So I consider that low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
So if somebody's very vitamin D deficient or very B12 or magnesium, we want to bring their levels into a normal range. We don't want to make them excessively high, but we want to correct the deficiency. If the thyroid is not working, we need to do whatever we need to get it working. Sometimes it's medication. Sometimes it doesn't require that. And then with the metabolic dysfunction itself, our first step is dietary intervention, which if somebody has metabolism dysfunction, they're not metabolizing carbohydrate normally. So we have to watch the type and amount of carbohydrates. That's really what we're looking at.
Notice that she didn't say she starts with a prescription drug from the diet doctor. I'm just going to point that out.
Right. Well, and that's by design. Like when I started my practice, more than 20 years ago, a large percentage of my patients were older. And when I mean older, 70 and up. I live in Florida, and many of my patients had heart disease, atrial fibrillation, high blood pressure, kidney issues, significant enough. So taking the medication was not going to be something that was safe and effective.
No.
So our dietary prescription is looking at the type and the amount of carbohydrates. It's not a no-carb diet. It's not unlimited carb. We allow our patients, or we suggest that our patients have 2 fruits a day. It's not unlimited amounts of fruit.
Right.
we make a big deal as to make sure that our patients are getting adequate lean protein, and the stress on adequate and lean. So the reason for that is your metabolism is a significant part is genetic, but another part of it is determined by muscle mass, your fat mass. And that's determined, again, how much muscle you have. And to maintain it, you need to make sure, especially when dieting, that you are giving your body adequate protein. Because if you don't, you will break down your muscle tissue to meet the needs for amino acids that your body needs all the time to create hormones and make enzymes and things like that. So when people go through a starvation diet, they stop eating, they actually will lose muscle before they lose fat. So we don't want to lose muscle mass. We want to preserve muscle mass for health reasons, but also to keep the metabolism going. So we make sure that there's protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and actually 2 snacks a day. Nice. Many of my women patients, who are experiencing hormone change, are protein. Okay. They're used to having maybe fruit in the morning, or it's healthy, but there's no protein. Or, they might only have a little bit of protein at dinner, but nothing at lunch. They're having a green salad with just vegetables, because that's low calorie.
Right.
But they're breaking down muscle tissue in the process. And the hormone change does only accelerates. Absolutely. So it's adequate lean protein. So the lean part is, again, especially for women, fat matters. Right now, ketogenic is all the rage. And
right. I was going to ask. I have to ask.
As much fat as you want, eat nothing but fat. It's great and all that. It's like, I will tell you, after 25 years of working with women in menopause, the ones who eat a lot of fat, they don't lose weight. Fat is more calorie dense. So I want to make sure my patients have adequate lean protein. So that's chicken, that's fish. If there's red meat, it's leaner cuts of red meat. There's vegetarian sources, but it's not bacon and a cheeseburger with lots of,
Yep. All of the things that we're seeing online now with the keto movement. So that was actually going to be my next question, because, you've been in this industry for a long time. You see what really works and what really doesn't. And I personally, I've had plenty of people do a keto diet, and they've just messed with their hormones so much, and then come to me and then okay, I lost weight at first, but now I either plateaued or I've gained it back because it's just not working anymore. What's your experience with people that have taken that route of trying a ketogenic diet?
What I think is the honest truth is some things work for some people, so there is nothing like, oh, this is horrible, or
right.
Have you, because some people are going to respond very well to that. And we know that there's different genetic markers, but there are some people who there are certain markers that we can look at in pure genomics that will show us that if somebody has this genetic thing, if they have more than 9 grams of saturated fat in their diet, they're going to have inflammation. And it's not hard to get to these levels and things like that. I may not have the exact number right. Maybe I think it was 22 grams or something.
Right.
That's very easy to do, with even a moderately higher fat ketogenic diet. So we're all different.
Right.
What I do think there are some things from the ketogenic diet that can be helpful, such as, increasing time in eating.
Okay.
In my practice, we don't do that initially.
Okay.
Many of my patients have blood sugar instability where, they feel like they're basically, they don't know this, but they feel like, I'm so hungry, I'm going to eat anything that doesn't eat me first. My blood sugar is crashing. Yes. And usually the history will be they started their day off well, they really want to do well. So they just had strawberries in the morning, and then they get to work 2 hours later, and then they feel like they're going to hit the back, they're faint and lightheaded. And so the only thing there is donuts. So they eat them and so fast, and they're dealing with blood sugar instability. So we like to have that be stabilized. But it doesn't take that long to stabilize that. It could take a week or two. It could take slightly longer, as long as somebody's going ahead and giving their body the adequate lean protein. And then we're also working on increasing fiber in the diet. High fiber vegetables are our friends. So the adequate protein, the fiber, all of that is really, really helpful to help people feel full, but also to stabilize the blood sugar. And then we might be able to eliminate the snacks between meals because we're not having such dips with the sugar.
Right.
And maybe we can go ahead and have a longer fasting period from the end of dinner until breakfast, maybe get pushed out to like 10 o'clock or something like that. Things like that can be helpful for people.
Okay, so the obvious next question that y'all probably are going to guess that I'm going to ask is, what are your thoughts about fasting and intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so I know that's like really popular right now, and we don't use fasting per se, although we've had a few patients who, once they've gotten a good measure of success, gotten their blood sugar and metabolic dysfunction under control, have gone ahead and experimented with, increasing the periods and intervals. But I find that, our patients tend to do better with preserving muscle if they're making sure that they have the adequate protein for the day. Okay. We also know that the body can only utilize a certain amount of protein at any one time.
Right.
One thing that you could do with intermittent fasting, theoretically, is eat once a day.
Right.
So you can have one big meal once a day, but your body can only absorb at most like 40 grams of protein that would be present there. Now, that would be the amount in like a large piece of meat or something, but that's 40 grams that you're absorbing. So even if they had 80 grams of that big meal, like this large meal, they're only going to absorb 40, and 40 is not going to be adequate protein over the course of the day for a man or a woman.
No.
So I find that ends up kind of breaking down muscle tissue and stuff like that, which you don't want when somebody's trying to lose weight.
So you have someone like Jessica here who literally, you still eat first thing in the morning, don't you?
Actually, I don't, Miss Lauren.
Oh, did you change?
I've been changed that for a long time now. Oh. It really, for real, it just depends on how I'm feeling. I used to have to eat as soon as my feet hit the floor. I was like, I got to eat because I need to but yeah, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But I do feel like this is my heaviest I've been.
Yeah.
I don't know. You said 35. I'd say 32 because I've gained 15 pounds. And I used to be the person, I didn't have to work out a lot. I just eat whatever I wanted to eat, and my body just stayed right. But now it's kind of changing for me, so I gotta, get it to. But I don't eat first thing like I used to.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, Jessica really she's beautiful. I mean, I just saw her last month for my 40th birthday. She's still beautiful, but like she said, she has put on some weight. To everyone else, they're like, I would love to look like her. I'll just put that out there. But she was that person who literally couldn't gain weight if she tried. And now 30, I think it's really 30 when the metabolic changes start to happen. Especially, I mean, what do you think, Dr. Cederquist?
I think it depends on the person.
Okay.
So if somebody had both parents had diabetes, they may see these things earlier.
That's
so
true.
It really comes down to diabetes and then again, environment. And one of the things with functional medicine, we don't have all the answers to, but what about like hormone disrupting chemicals in our environment and stuff like that, so there's many contributors, some of which, we're not sure of all of them.
So true. So true. This is a new practice that we're going to do. I want to take this time to take a little, not break, but I have Jessica who has picked out an iTunes review of the week, and we're going to start giving away prizes for people because ultimately the podcast is here to give people free information so that they can change their life, so that they can become more fit and healthy. But of course, my last name's Fitz, so it's Fitz and Healthy podcast. But the way that iTunes works is that the more people that have left reviews and subscribe to it and given a whatever star rating, the easier it is to find. So, Jessica, you have one picked out, yes?
Yes.
Can you read it for us?
A doctor who actually knows what she's talking about. Lauren, I love that you actually want to help people before they get sick. Instead of prescribing pills, she talks about healing our bodies with food, fasting, then fitness. I'm so incredibly blessed to have you in my life and for not only showing me to be healthy in body, but in mind. And that's Deb Mo Photo.
So if Deb Mo Photo can email us at info@ClubFitzFitness, we have a nice little gift for you. So all you have to do is go to the iTunes podcast app, search Fitz and Healthy podcast, go subscribe, give us hopefully a 5-star review. But we do appreciate all feedback, whether it be good or constructive criticism. So thank you guys so much for doing that. Okay, so Dr. Cederquist, so if someone wants to work with you, is it only people in Florida that can work with you, or do you have options for people that are like in Chicago or Alabama or wherever?
Yeah, so it's great that you ask. In the state of Florida, it is still strict in terms of like telemedicine and stuff like that. You have to actually meet the person in person once. But that's one of the reasons that more than almost 20 years ago, we developed bistroMD. So the tenets of the meal plan that we use, the adequate lean protein, lots of vegetables, a lot of fiber, keeping the fat under control. It's a lot of work. And a lot of my patients would say that, I feel so great. This is really working for my metabolism, but it's so much work. Can you do the work? Can you do that? Can you find someone to create the food? And my husband's an entrepreneur, and he also is really an amateur chef. He loves going to restaurants, getting a meal, recreating it, trying to make it lighter. And so we created bistroMD like probably 18 years ago at this point. It's national in all 50 states, and you can have a bistroMD weight loss week delivered to your house every single week. Now, it's very different from other type of diet programs, other foods, we won't mention them, but they're dehydrated food that are mostly chemicals.
I was about to say, let's talk about the ingredients of those.
Right. And they say it looks like a hamburger. Like, how is it possible it came out of a packet type of thing? Exactly. But these are real meals that are actually, like, the vegetables are they're cooked and then they're flash frozen. The same with the protein. They put tremendous amount of work over time to try to make meals that are juicy and taste good, because they're frozen.
Right.
And then reheated. And you have gone to the grocery store many times, gotten a frozen meal. It's horrible.
Horrible.
It's loaded with sodium, but it has a couple pieces of chicken, like about this big. And after you eat it, you're as hungry as that when you had it before, but you don't want another one. It's like, good. But, our family fight over the meals, because they're just great. Like a breakfast frittata that is sweet onion frittata, and it comes with 3 turkey sausages. Everyone wants to eat that in the morning. It's not like a sacrifice. So bistroMD is available to people throughout the U.S.
I love it. So if they wanted to come to Naples to see you initially, but then be followed by you, do they have that option?
Yeah, that's been done many times over the years, that people have flown down, and Naples is a nice place to visit.
I was about to say, Naples, Florida right now does not sound bad.
No, it's really, really nice. Exactly.
We don't have a fenced-in backyard, so when I take my dogs out, I have to always take them out on a leash and go endure the cold with them. And literally this morning it was 6 degrees. But it's I know it's cold, but it's at least the sun is up and there's not a cloud in the sky, so I can bundle up and make it doable. But Florida right now sounds really nice. I'm just saying. So okay, let me ask you this. When you have a patient come in and see you, what are some of the factors that help make them successful long-term in their weight loss goals and maintenance of those losses?
Yeah. So I find the most successful people are people who really willing to look at the lab. Sometimes people need the data. Not everyone needs the data. It depends on the type of person. But that they really they understand that they need to have the adequate protein, and they need to watch the carbs and watch the fat. It doesn't mean no carbs, no fat, but within a parameter, they're successful. Now, say something like bistroMD where the meals are provided, like you get an entire week of meals. It's relatively simple. You can just eat them, and if you ate nothing else, then you're following the program.
Right.
For our patients who prefer to cook, the ones who do best are the ones who are really logging it down, and they're like, did I get 25 grams of protein? Did I get 30 grams of protein? Because people will say, oh yeah, I had protein in the morning. I had like an egg. And it's like, well, that's great. That's 7 grams of protein. Right. But in order to preserve your fat-free mass in the setting of weight loss, we're wanting 25 to 30 grams. How are you getting that?
Right.
So without really tracking it, the macronutrients is what I call it. Protein, carb, and fat ratios. The ones who really embrace it and do it, they are able to really lose fat while maintaining muscle mass, and it's very, very motivating.
So if you have a patient, let's say in Texas, because I'm a Texas girl, so you have a patient in Texas that is like, okay, this chick, I want to go see her. I need an excuse to go to Naples, so I'm going to go. But before I go, I'm going to ask my primary care doc to order me a bunch of labs before I see her. What would those labs be specifically?
Yeah, so in all of our patients, we order the same 11 labs.
Okay.
And these are labs that are inexpensive, relatively, but basically any lab like LabCorp or Quest can do it. So you don't have to spend a lot of money in a specialty lab or something like that. So the first one is a CBC, a complete blood count. We want to make sure someone doesn't have anemia or some problem that's going on with their immune system.
Right.
The next one is what's called a complete metabolic profile. It's a test that gives us our blood sugar, kidney function, liver function, and the electrolytes. And that's really, really helpful because, again, looking at blood sugar is important. The next thing we do is a lipid profile, which is your good cholesterol, your bad cholesterol, triglycerides. But again, these are the things where we find evidence of metabolic dysfunction. The next test we do is a fasting insulin level. So insulin is a hormone that's secreted when you eat a meal. In the morning, when you're fasting, the level should be less than 2. Many of my patients, the level is 20 or 30. So what it means that even when you've slept all night, your body has such high insulin levels because your metabolism is dysfunctional. So somebody who has a high insulin level in the morning may not be hungry because their body thinks that they've eaten.
Right.
But when you have high insulin levels, you also store fat more efficiently. So we have to improve that. So that's the insulin level. We do 3 tests of thyroid.
Okay.
So something called the thyroid stimulating hormone, and then we do a free T4 and a free T3. Because we want to look at the actual thyroid hormones because thyroid hormone issues are not as common in my practice as the metabolism dysfunction. That level is about 90%. But thyroid problems are probably 20%. And when you have them both together, it's a disaster. Weight management. So you have to fix the thyroid issue, fix the metabolic dysfunction, and then people can finally be able to lose weight. The next tests are vitamin D level. That's a 25 hydroxy vitamin D, a serum B12, and then a magnesium level. The magnesium level that I order is called magnesium in the red blood cell, not in the serum, because the body really regulates magnesium very carefully. So you will have normal serum magnesium unless you're in the emergency room having a heart attack.
Right.
You're able to see that you can have a low red blood cell magnesium if something's going on with you, nutritionally, or your body's having issues much sooner. And then the last test we do is the 3-month blood sugar. That's the hemoglobin A1C. And most people's doctors are willing to order them. They might be like, I'm not sure about the vitamin D. I don't know if you need it, or but some of the vitamin levels might be a little harder to get done, but some of the others are very.
How often do you see vitamin D that's too high? Do you ever see it?
Yes, we'll see that with somebody who's supplementing with vitamin D. And it never occurs naturally that I've seen, somebody. But sometimes people will be taking 5,000 or 10,000 a day. And sometimes those levels are fine, but vitamin D is a fat-soluble hormone, meaning that you can indeed take too much. And one of the concerns that I have are people like you can just go to the pharmacy, you don't need a prescription, or drugs to get 5,000 a D, and then you take it ongoing, but you've never looked at your levels.
Right.
You can get toxic on vitamin D, which can affect your calcium and things like that. So it is something that taking higher levels of vitamin D may be appropriate, but the levels have to be monitored regularly.
So is 50,000 a week too much for vitamin D?
No, the amount is really dependent upon the person. It's about your.
Okay.
So many of our patients, we do put on 50,000. It's a week, 50,000 a week, not 50,000 a day.
Yeah.
1,000 a week ends up being like 7,000 a day. But many people have a level of less than 20 when they start will need 50,000. But you find that 6 weeks into it, 12 weeks into it, we're checking the levels, and a lot of times our patients no longer need 50,000; they need less. So you do have to monitor it. But
I was just asking because mine was very low, and that's what I got put on. So that's why I was asking.
Right, and that may be absolutely appropriate for you, but you just
Well, and the fact that you got it checked, that's the thing. And I mean, we've talked about this before in past episodes, especially people of color, because you guys have more protection from the sun. But this time of year, almost everyone, no matter what color their skin is, especially if you live farther away from the equator, you're most likely, if you're not supplementing with vitamin D, your levels are low. And I mean, Dr. Cederquist, can you talk about some of the things that happen when your vitamin D level is low?
Yeah, well, we know it contributes to the blood sugar and metabolism dysfunction. So in one of the studies that I reviewed for my book, they found that if you took someone who was vitamin D deficient and brought them to the normal level, it could improve that insulin resistance or that metabolic dysfunction by 60%. So that's huge. And that's what I talked about, the low-hanging fruit. You know, it's very easy for people to take a vitamin D supplement. There's many other things vitamin D does. It helps with bone health. There's various studies out there that maybe it has an impact in cancer prevention. It's not necessarily proven.
Right.
There's a lot of different controversy, but also in terms of heart health and things like that. But the exact number is still controversial.
Right.
Like some doctors are recommending high levels. Others say it's too much. I like a level about 40 or something like that. I'm people up to 80s and 90s or something like that. But there are certainly doctors who will for specific disease conditions like multiple sclerosis and things like that.
Right.
But I'm also very aware that people can take too much.
Yes.
We try to impart upon them is that, this is a fat-soluble vitamin. It does need to be monitored.
The point that I want the listener to take away from this is that supplements oftentimes are required, but having some guidance by someone like Dr. Cederquist that can say, okay, look, we have this lab, so now we're going to add the supplement to correct it, and then we're going to probably have to keep it at a maintenance level once we get it back to normal. Are there any supplements that you have seen that almost all of your patients do better on?
Well, everyone's individual for sure. Right. I do find that magnesium deficiency is common, and when you correct it, people feel it. Yes. It really makes a difference. So the reasons magnesium is so low is that our food environment is very magnesium deficient. It's found primarily in vegetables, but with refining of grains, and things like that, you actually lose magnesium. And because of farming practices, magnesium is not required to be returned to the soil. So a tomato of 50 years ago organic compared to a 50-year, like a current tomato, is going to have less magnesium. So it's very, very common. But also when people are stressed, you actually lose magnesium. You actually lose magnesium in your urine. So there's a lot of things that cause people to become deficient in magnesium. The symptoms can be anxiety, really common muscle spasms, muscle cramps, irritability, not sleeping well, and constipation is like a big one. So many people
you just described half of my audience, just so you know.
And many people have gone ahead and figured, well, this is just what happens when you get older. Gets constipated, nobody sleeps well, everyone's muscles are tight and spasm. It's like, well, you become magnesium deficient. And so again, that's something where people really see the improvement of replacing magnesium. Although not all magnesium is the same. There's many types of magnesium. I like to use magnesium glycinate because it's a very well-absorbed magnesium. And the glycinate part of it is actually calming. So people who are kind of like bit and they're always going and, more prone to anxiety. Yeah, they take magnesium glycinate and it really helps. I'm one of those persons. And, when I did my, genetic testing that showed I had this specific SNP, a thing in the DNA that shows that I have this issue. I don't break down my catecholamines. Catecholamines are like your epinephrine and stuff, the stuff that gets released from anxious. Mine sticks around longer. And people like that tend to have really good focus and they're really don't let things go. And these are great people to become doctors. You want someone who's focused and who are worried about stuff. They don't want to miss things. It's like they're on top of it. But, that's not always a great place to be in your life, always kind of worked up. And I started taking magnesium based on my levels of magnesium glycinate probably 10 years ago. And I was like, oh, I must be just getting calmer as I'm like getting older and confident in everything. Like, when somebody calls me, I'm not immediately like expecting the worst. I was like, no, it's actually that this was really helpful. So I'm a big fan of magnesium.
Nice. All right. So I have a feeling that we could talk forever, but I know that you actually have an appointment or a patient coming up soon. So I want to make sure that my audience knows exactly where they can find you, all of your social media stuff, and then possibly anything else. So please let them know.
Yeah. So during the podcast, I got confirmation.
Yay.
Listeners of the podcast, if they log in, I don't know if we need a special code, but I'll get you to that.
Okay.
25% off plus free shipping on their first order of bistroMD if they wanted to try that.
Yay. So they just go to bistromd.com.
Correct.
And on once they fill out their order and they're getting ready to pay, we will have a discount code for them, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and just call it FITz, FITZ, so that way the person who does your website knows that is the discount code, and so that people that listening that too lazy to go take the time to read the show notes, let's just be honest. So FITZ will be the discount code. We'll make sure that gets involved. Social media. Are you on social media?
Yeah, so bistroMD is on social media. I'm the medical director.
Okay.
So they have just tremendous presence on there, Facebook, Instagram, all of it.
Cool. Excellent. And then do you have a website that you want to send them to besides bistroMD?
Yeah, bistroMD actually, I was just told that no code was needed to go and put that offer in. So
okay, excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, good. Then no code is needed. Forget the FITz.
For bistroMD. And then with regards to other information, the website, drcederquist.com. So it's www.drcederquist.com has a lot of information and more details about the practice.
Perfect. And I assume that's if they want to come and see you first time to possibly be a telemedicine patient, that's where they can get your contact info to schedule an appointment?
Yeah, you basically speak to someone there at the office who will just kind of walk them through the process.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's like in the state of Florida, anybody who wants to work with us has to be seen in person.
Of course.
Yeah, like some states are different. Unfortunately, it's 50 states, 50 different things.
I know. It's painful.
Actually has to be a patient.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. I truly will tell you this, that for people that don't go to these medical conferences, typically there will be companies that will sponsor and hire doctors like Dr. Cederquist to speak, and they provide food, and the food was healthy, but I can't say that all of the doctors that were hired to speak were good, and you were actually my favorite. So I was glued to everything you had to say, and it's a tough job to speak when everyone's eating in the middle of lunch. So you are wonderful. You spoke to my heart, and I just appreciate you so much. So Jessica, any last thoughts or words?
No, ma'am. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the FITz and Healthy podcast. Make sure that you go to the iTunes podcast app or wherever you listen to your podcast and subscribe. Don't miss out. Share this. This is meant to be a tool for you to use for yourself, but to help other people so that they can figure out how to become their most fit and healthy self. So thank you guys. We will see y'all next week. Bye. I appreciate your time listening so much. If you enjoyed this episode of the FITz and Healthy podcast, can you please go do me a favor and go subscribe at whatever platform that it is that you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. We read every single review, and we appreciate the time that you take to leave your thoughts and opinions. Now, also remember, while I am a medical doctor, the information I provide here is not intended to provide medical advice or professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or to any other individual. I am providing general information for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for medical or professional care. You should not use this information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. The information I share is not intended to treat, cure, or diagnose any disease or medical condition. If you believe you have a medical emergency, just call 911 immediately or your physician. Now, enough of that medical legal jargon. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate your time. Now, go live a FITz and healthy life.